Hello and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then hi, my name's Zoe. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. Today's video is another true crime video, so if you do want to see more true crime content from myself, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and also turn on that bell so you're notified every single time that I post. So before jumping into today's video, I just want to say thank you so much for everybody's supportive comments after my true crime week. I literally love your guys' support, and seeing your comments all the time literally just makes my day. So please keep commenting and interacting with me because that's amazing. So before jumping into the case, I'm going to give my usual disclaimer. I mean no disrespect to anybody that I talk about in this video, anybody involved in the case or anybody who knows anybody personally in this case. I'm simply putting the information together from online sources to raise a little bit of awareness about this case. Also, if I pronounce anything wrong at all, please let me know in the comments below. Today we're talking about the Villisca axe murders. The Moore family lived in a very small town in Iowa called Villisca. The town was very small, and there was about 2,500 people living in this town, so it was a very small, close-knit community. And the town's name actually means pretty place. And it was sort of your typical movie type town. The Moore family consisted of Dawson and Sarah Moore and their 4 children. Herman Montgomery, who was 11, Mary Catherine, who was 10, Arthur Boyd, who was 7, and Paul Vernon, who was 5. The Moores were very known and liked within their community, and they were just your normal, typical family. On the 10th of June 1912, Mary had actually invited 2 of her friends to stay the night, Anna May and Lena Gertrude. That evening, the Moore family and Mary's 2 friends actually attended the local church to be part of the children's programme, because Mary's mother actually coordinated this programme. When the programme ended at around 9:30 p.m, the family then walked back home, and they arrived home between 9:45 and 10 p.m. The next day at around 7 a.m, the Moore's neighbour Mary Peckham actually became a little bit worried when she hadn't seen that the Moores hadn't done their house chores. This was unusual for the Moores family, as she recalled that the chores is something that the Moores did day to day. It was part of their life. She also recalled how the house just sat still and seemed very quiet. Mary knocked on the front door, but nobody answered. So she tried the door herself, but the door was locked. She then let the family chickens out of their pens, and then she called Ross Moore, which was Joseph's brother. Soon after, he arrived at the home and he tried knocking and trying to shout the family, but he again got no response. He had a spare key for the Moore's residence, so he unlocked the door and entered the home. Mary stayed outside while Ross entered the home and then entered the guest bedroom. And this is where he made a gruesome discovery. He discovered the bodies of Anna and Lena, which were the 2 girls who were spending the night at the Moore's residence. Ross told Mary to call the local police officers, and shortly after, the town's primary peace officer made his way to the home, and this peace officer was called Hank Horton. He decided to search the home, and this is when he found the 2 parents, Josa and Sarah, and their 4 children, all dead in their beds. All 8 people in that home had been bludgeoned to death. He also found an axe, which is believed to be the murder weapon, and this was found in the guest bedroom. 2 cigarette butts was actually found in the attic, so this led officers to believe that the killer waited in the attic until the Moores were asleep. The police officers also believed that the killings happened between midnight and 5 AM. The killer started his killing spree in the master bedrooms where the parents were sleeping. Dawson received the most injuries out of all the family. His face had been cut so much by the axe that his eyes were actually missing. They had used the blade of the axe on Dawson but used the blunt end on the rest of the family members. The killer then proceeded to the children's bedroom, killing all 4 of them with blows to the head. The killer then went back to the parents' bedroom to inflict more injuries on the parents, despite the fact that they were probably already dead. The killer then moved to the guest bedroom where they killed Mary's friends. Later on, investigators did conclude that all the victims were asleep whilst they were murdered, except for Lena. It was thought that she actually tried to fight back, given the way that her body was positioned and all the defensive wounds that she had. Her nightdress was pulled up to her waist and she didn't have underwear on, so this suggested to police that she was sexually assaulted. During the investigation, there were so many suspects, and I've seen the list of all these suspects, and even one of them went to trial twice, but nobody has ever been charged with the murder of the Moore family. Most of the suspects were just men that hadn't been accounted for on that night and didn't have an alibi. But there are a few that kind of stick out, so I'm going to list a few of these suspects and give the reason why they were suspects. The first suspect was Andrew Sawyer. No evidence linked him directly to the case, but his name did come up multiple times in the grand jury testimony. People had reported Anthony for just being too interested in the case. He had been looking for work, and on that morning of the murders he actually turned up to a company in a suit that was wet and muddy from the knees down. Other people had said they were uneasy about Anthony, as he had told them that he slept fully clothed and with an axe. Andrew was even that worried about police thinking he was a suspect that he decided to leave the town for a different town, but a couple of days later the police apprehended him. Andrew was later dismissed as a suspect as he had an alibi. He was actually arrested in another town for another crime on the night of the murders. It was confirmed by a police officer that Andrew wasn't even in Villisca that night. The second suspect is Reverend George Kelly, and it was actually this person who was sent to trial twice. George was a travelling minister who was born in England. He had mental health issues as a teenager, and he has always been described as very peculiar. He was accused of being a peeker, and he would spy on young girls and women when they were undressed. He actually came to Villisca to teach the children's programme that the Moores family had attended on the night of the murder. He then suddenly left the town at around 5:30 AM that morning, and then he even went on to confess these crimes, but the jury did not believe him. He became strangely fascinated with this case. He even sent letters to the victims' families describing the murders and what he did to them. They didn't know whether this was his mental health talking or if this was something he had actually done. When the case went to trial the second time, George Kelly was actually acquitted. But George since has been arrested for multiple sexual related crimes. The next suspect is Frank Jones. Dawson actually worked with Frank for a very long time at his implement store. Dawson actually ended up opening his own store. It was actually speculated that Dawson had possibly stole some of Frank's customers, and this was enough for police to consider him as a suspect. It was also later theorised that Frank actually got someone else to kill the Moore family, and the person who was suspected of that was William Mansfield. It was actually speculated he was a serial killer after he killed his wife, his daughters and his parents-in-law with an axe 2 years after the Moore family murders. Now, around this suspect I'm going to be going over quite a bit of information, so it may get confusing, but please try and stick with this part. It was also believed that William actually committed some axe murders in Kansas 2 days before the Moore family murders. He is also suspected for the double murders of Jenny Peterson and Jenny Miller in Illinois. All the crime scenes were committed and left in the same manner, and all the crime scenes were accessible by train. He was arrested and taken to trial, but they refused to charge him because he had an alibi and this alibi checked out. But despite this, he was still the prime suspect in many murders, like the ones that I've already mentioned, plus many other unsolved axe murders, like the ones that happened on the South Pacific Railroad and the unsolved Axeman of New Orleans. A detective described William as a cokehead serial killer. The detective was looking into all the cases that I have just mentioned, and he said he could place William at every single crime scene. The crimes were all committed in the same way. They were all axe murders. They were all very violent, and in every single crime scene all the windows and mirrors had been covered, including the mirrors and windows in the Moore family home. The detective convinced the grand jury to take William to trial, and in 1916 he was taken to trial, but it was later dismissed as again he had an alibi and payroll records showed him at work. The last suspect I'm going to talk about is Henry Moore, and he isn't a relation of the Moore family. He was a suspected serial killer as he killed his mother and grandmother just a couple of months after the Moore murders. His weapon of choice was an axe. The murders were very similar, so this led police to think that he could have committed this murder too, but nothing ever came of that suspect. The Villisca axe murders actually remains unsolved to this day, and now the case has gone cold, despite all the suspects that police had. The killer was very careful, and he literally left behind no DNA and no fingerprint. The fact that there was no fingerprints leads police to believe that he is already a criminal, as he would know that his fingerprints would already be in the database. And like I said, this case has had no leads and it is still a cold case. This case has become very popular because of its paranormal aspect. The house where the murders were committed has become notorious for paranormal investigators and ghost hunters and people going on tours to seek the paranormal. There are lots of sources online showing all the paranormal stuff around this case, so if that's something you're interested in, I will leave that linked in the description box below. I know that the paranormal isn't for everyone and not everybody is interested or believes in it, so I'll not go into much more detail about that. But like I said, all the information in YouTube videos and stuff will be linked down below. So what do you think about this case? Do you think that one of the suspects possibly committed this crime? And I know there's not a lot of information on this case, but I think that's because it happened so long ago. We didn't have the media and public sources like we do today back then, so it is harder to get your hands on that information. So that is all for today's case. I am so glad that I'm back because, as you are aware, my True Crime Week was already pre-filmed, so I had all my videos already, so I feel like I've not filmed in so long. I hope that the lighting has been better for you guys because I now have new lighting, so we can see less comments about that. But yeah, if I've had a lisp in this video, I'm sorry. As you know, I had surgery on my face. I had some teeth removed. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it really was a big deal for me. I had to be put to sleep and everything, and I have all inside my mouth stitched up, which is brilliant, but it's still a bit swollen, so I have still got a lisp. So if you did enjoy this video, please give it a massive thumbs up. Don't forget, I soon have a new series starting and I'm looking for names for this series. It's going to be like different countdowns. So the first video is going to be my top 10 disappearances, and it's going to be things like that. So if you have a name idea, please leave it down below. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I shall see you in my next video. Bye.